We're back with another amazing opportunity to connect with an individual who's going to just wow you. I'm really excited to introduce this individual today on the Circle of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, John Kovacs Jr., founder of the Champion Circle Networking Association, currently located in Salt Lake City, Utah. And joining us today, and before I bring him on and introduce him from all the way from Canada, Calgary to be specific, I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Tyler Foley. Let me introduce him formally, and then we'll bring him on and we'll have a few questions to ask him and to get into some awesome stories. Sean Tyler Foley has been acting in the film and television industry since he was 6 years old. That's over 35 years of amazing experience in the background of the film industry. He has appeared in film productions such as, and including Freddy versus Jason, one of my personal favorites, Door to Door, Carrie, the musical Ragtime, and is the number one best-selling author of the book, The Power to Speak Naked. I love this. This is such a good topic. Having 35 plus years of experience in that. And that was a big truck that just went by. You guys know that my office hangs over the highway, so that's pretty cool. So many amazing productions. Currently also working as a safety consultant, instructor, and keynote presenter for the past 10 years. Again, the number one best-selling author of the book, The Power to Speak Naked, which is, I'm so excited to talk about that. And then thriving despite a medical incident, which I want to get into at age 17, that left him paralyzed for a while. And I'm excited to just get to know this individual today. Guys, please help me and welcome Mr. Tyler Foley. Thank you for joining us today, Tyler, on the Circle of Knowledge podcast.
Oh, John, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm glad we could get this done. I'm really glad we were able to connect too. So this is fun, especially to, I love Salt Lake City, man. We're going to have to come and visit in person because Utah is just beautiful, beautiful country. So.
Yeah, and I live just right at the base of the ski resorts near Park City. So you've got a spare bedroom of mine if you ever need it, and you can come and ski as long as you want and stay as long as you need. It's a great place.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, and it's good too in the summer. Like I really enjoy. It's very similar to where I live, where you can play year round, and you just have to change up the gear in which you're strapping on.
I love that. I love that. Well, that being said, Tyler, I know I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but tell us a little bit about your background, where you've come from. You've been in the film industry for so long, but tell us how you got into that and leading up to where you're at today.
Yeah, I actually got into acting very young. I to this day, I'm not really sure if it was because of or would have happened anyways, but when my father passed away when I was 6 years old, I know that my family was kind of looking for an outlet for me. I didn't outwardly grieve my father's passing for almost 6 years. In fact, just over 6 years. And I still remember the day that it kind of washed over me that, hey, Dad's not coming back.
Wow.
I was 12 years old accepting an award at the award ceremony at the end of the school year. And he passed away, midway through my first year of school in elementary, so first grade. And so that time gap there was when I first really consciously became aware of the fact that my father's passing meant permanency. So at 6, that's a really hard thing to process and understand, and natural too. But, out of concern, my sister, who was 2 at the time, was very outwardly emotional. But I don't know that she fully processed the reality of it, but I think she was mimicking what she saw other people doing. So they were sad, so she needed to be sad. For me, I was like, I don't understand this. And I think they were looking for an emotional outlet for me. And I had, just prior to my father's passing, done a school play, and just loved it. Like I had lit up with it, and it was a thing that I really enjoyed doing and that I wanted to do. And then I'd done another like an Easter play at school. And so when my uncle, who worked for the city of Calgary, did all of his life too, he retired as a city He worked right across from our arts complex, and my uncle was a perennial bachelor. You know, he ate out for lunch, dinner, breakfast, everything. Everything was purchased. If it didn't come in a styrofoam container, it wasn't food to him. So he went across very regularly to this restaurant diner area across the street in the arts complex, and he overheard one of the casting directors complaining about how hard could it be to find a small kid to play Tiny Tim. And he kind of, his ears perked up. He's like, well, how tiny do they need to be? Like, what do you need? You know, it's like, my nephew is a wee kid. And to this day, I still am. Like, going up all through high school, I was always the kid at the very front row center of every elementary school picture, because I was tiny. And like, even right now, full grown Tyler is like 5'7" and 140 pounds. And that's me at my bulkiest weight. That was me putting on, really trying to take up more space in the net. So I've always been tiny. And so he just asked, he's like, how can I get my nephew into this? And they gave him the cast director gave him her card, and I, you know, got put in touch. And then next thing I know, I'm auditioning for it. And then I'm in theater, and that became life, was doing stage productions, and then later into my teens, getting into film and television. And then it just, from there, it just took off. Like, that was the career for almost 20 years.
Wow. And leading up to, you know, what you're doing now, are you still acting, or are you doing that as well as other things too? What's going on in the present day?
No, acting and is like the mob. You know, you try to leave, but it just brings you back in.
It pulls you right back in.
Yeah, I just finished a really fun movie. I just had a little bit part, like literally 2 lines and a single scene with a project that Shannon Elizabeth was actually filming up here. So that was really cool, especially because I've actually worked on 3 projects with her. In the early 2000s, I was living in Vancouver, and she was up filming Scary Movie and then 13 Ghosts. Scary Movie, I did a whole bunch of like background and stand-in and photo double work for, like all the stuff that doesn't make it into the credits. And then 13 Ghosts, I was actually a utility stand-in on. And so both of those projects I worked with her, but never worked with her.
Wow.
Right. She was around, and I happened to be working on the same thing. So for me, like literally 20 years later, to have the opportunity to actually work with her and be like, hey, do you remember me? And her be like, no. was pretty fun, pretty cool. So that, you know, I still dabble in it. It's just now it's a hobby, right? It's a thing. My agent phone, like, there's a lot of work going on up here right now. COVID seems to have really expanded the ability for, it used to be like, if you weren't in Vancouver, you weren't in Toronto, you weren't in New York, and you weren't in LA, maybe a little bit in Atlanta, because Atlanta's film scene has really taken off in the last couple of years. But if you weren't in one of those markets, you weren't going to be in any projects. And now there's a whole bunch more self-tape. There's a lot more regional filming, trying to take advantage of natural landscape instead of CGI. And so like our film industry up here has exploded, like gone from less than 100 million a year spent on film and TV here to over $1 billion in like 2.5 years. Like, it's just it's exploded. I can't believe the growth of it. And so my opportunities have skyrocketed. So it's one of those things where my agent keeps calling. I'm like, yeah, I'll make time to audition. I'm never looking to it. The nice thing is because I'm running multiple businesses now, when I was in my early 20s, I had to do the grind and the hustle. You know, I had to be booking gigs or I wasn't going to pay my rent. Now it's one of those things. Oh, hey, that'd be a cool project to be in. Oh, I got it. Cool. Like, I didn't even know who was in this past project that I was until the day that I showed up on set and they gave me my sides and I saw the call sheet and I was like, Shannon Elizabeth is the star of this. That's cool. You know, and then I do my thing and I walk away. So it's been quite freeing, but yeah, no, I still do it when I can.
As a consumer, I definitely can concur because just interested in the actors, their backgrounds, where they came from. I feel like since 2020, or even just the breach of 2019 to today, many of the new Netflix productions, some of the newest movies coming out, and a lot of just new television shows, and some of the like the top producer ones, like the ones that make people culturally shift to, I watch this show, or I watch the, have all been Canadian productions out of Vancouver, Toronto, or I can't remember the other place, but it's phenomenal. It's growing, and it's really cool. Pouring into you a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about the power to speak naked. I'm fascinated by this. Obviously, I'm a motivational speaker myself, and I'd love to learn more about that and point my listeners towards your book and what you've done there.
Well, so book's right there. Just
look at that. Is that you?
We're going to talk. I would love to claim that. Like it's a pretty close. It's a reasonable facsimile of me.
That's about a $140, 5'7" guy.
Yeah, no, he's yeah. If he was 5'7", we don't know how tall he is.
Yeah, exactly.
He could be 6 feet, and then he's going to be a little bit more. But no, I mean he's close to me. Originally I did want to do the cover shot myself, but we couldn't arrange the shoot in time. The cover design actually altered last minute. This is very close to my original idea of what I wanted. And then through the course of some consulting and different things, right? Like the book goes through so much from the time you write it to when it actually comes out. And there was a brief period of time now in the book's life, but it was probably about 9 or 10 months in reality, where the cover was actually my face, and it's my headshot and cropped out and Power to Speak Naked and Sean Tyler Foley. And the idea was that the book was going to be used really to brand me and my brand. And I never really felt comfortable with that, because I wrote the book to help other people. So it's never been about me. It's always been about, how do you find your story? How do you find comfort in saying some of the things that maybe you're afraid to say, which in reality is probably the thing that your audience needs to hear? How do we find strength and courage and just get over our fear of judgment? Because really that's what it is. One of the things that I like to do with this book is explode this myth that people are afraid of public speaking. That's not a reality. We're not afraid to speak in public, or commerce would completely and totally collapse. Anybody who's ever been to a restaurant and ordered food has spoken in public. And if you didn't know your wait staff, you spoke to a complete stranger. So this myth that we're terrified to speak in public is not, in fact, the case. But what we are afraid of is public judgment. If the focus is on us, if the spotlight is on us, we have a room full of people whose attention is directed towards what we're saying, we're afraid that the words that we're going to use are going to be misconstrued, or that we're not going to be understood. It becomes this real ego play. Yeah. And I wanted to let people know that when you're speaking in public, it has nothing to do with you. You could say anything. It has nothing to do with you. What really matters is your audience. And if you focus on your audience and what they need, what their desires and wants are, if you are serving your audience, it doesn't matter what you say. It's what value you're providing to your audience. And so that's really how the book came to be. So when I was explaining that to my graphic designer, she kept showing me samples and examples of the cover based on the direction that she had received from the publisher. And she's like, "You really don't like that, do you?" I'm like, "No, not really." She's like, "Well, what did you want?" And I'm like, "Well, originally I had this idea like this." And in my first iteration in my head, I wanted it to be me full frontal with the power over where it needed to be, right? Same placement, just turned around. And then she was like, but you don't want your face on there, right? You don't want it to be about you. I was like, no. She's like, well, what if we turn them around? Because then anybody could literally step into you. You're right. You're walking the path. You want people to be able to step into your shoes and be able to do this on their own. I'm like, yes. And then it can be in anybody. And so that's when the we got this guy turned around. But I had done the photo shoot for me doing it like this. That was already established, but we never did the reverse. And we were under a deadline. I had I think 2 or 3 days to get the finalized cover to my publisher for approval. And so my graphic designer, Lorraine Shelba, who she's done incredible work for so many of the authors that I know personally within my circle, that like she just her body of work is incredible. And so she crunched this out really quick, and to get this image, she grabbed a stock image from Jeff Bezos's site. The irony is Jeff won't let me advertise my book on his site because it violates his advertising clauses, because this shows a person in a sexually explicit position and draws undue attention to the breasts and or buttocks in a sexually explicit way. Or some words to that effect. And every time I look at it, I'm like, but this stock image sells terry cloth towels on your site, Jeff. Why can't I advertise my book?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can sell it. I can sell it on his platform, but I definitely can't have a paid advertisement for it, because that is a no. But I can purchase the stock image from him, and that is perfectly acceptable.
That is acceptable, right? Yeah, when they rule the world, they can have their own.
That's right.
Thank you for speaking into that. Everyone should go grab a copy, whether it's go to your website or to Amazon. You can just pick a copy there. But The Power to Speak Naked, that's awesome.
Or better yet, Jeff has enough money. Okay,
yeah, let's not give him anymore.
He's flying to space in a phallic-shaped rocket. We don't need to dump any more money into his pocket. But particularly for your listeners who are based in the United States. So for your international listeners, this doesn't count. You're going to have to go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or, hey, walk into your local bookstore, because my publisher has done a very good job of getting it into local bookstores worldwide. So you should be able to go into your local book retailer, and if not, purchase it right then and there. At least order it into your store and help out your local retailer. So if you're in the States and you want to help out your local retailer, but you've really enjoyed the last 2 years of the virtual comforts of being able to click a button and have things just magically show up at your doorstep, there's a great website called bookshop.org. And if you go to bookshop.org, you can order any print book that you can think of, and that will come from your local retailer. So bookshop.org will reach out to your local book retailer, and they will ship it. So that's a little bit more sustainable, because you're not having to ship this thing all over everywhere. You're not taking up this big, huge warehouse in the middle of wherever, and all the space that goes with the logistics of trying to get you your Amazon shipment in less than 24 hours. And bonus, the titles on bookshop.org are cheaper than what you can get anywhere else. So my book regularly retails for $17.95 on bookshop.org. I believe it's like $16.50 or $16.55, somewhere around there. And your proceeds go to support your local bookstore. And a portion of your proceeds goes into a pooled fund that local bookstores can then apply for financial aid. And right now, I think bookshop.org has raised over $16 million to help out your local book retailers. So for all of those reasons, if you're looking to shop online and you're in the U.S., this only counts at the U.S. Unfortunately, bookshop.org is only a United States organization currently. Go to bookshop.org, and you can definitely get The Power to Speak Naked, or any other title that you want, right? So that would be my humble request, regardless of what title they're looking to get, John. If they go to bookshop.org, I think it's a great place to be shopping for literary material.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great educational piece for me and many of my listeners who are always picking up copies of books everywhere. So go check that out. Go look it up. The Power of Speaking Naked. I do want to pour into you a little bit more, Tyler, wherever you want to go by, Sean Tyler Foley. And
if you want to make my mom happy, you call me Sean Tyler Foley, and she'll be listening to this back. She'll be like, "Oh, John called you by your full name." That was a dead ringer impersonation of my mother, by the way.
That was perfect. That was great, and I'm all about making the mothers happy. That's fantastic. I want to pour into you, and let's just talk about the knowledge you would like to share. I know that you wanted to talk about this concept of the things that people aren't saying are the things that they want to, that need to be said. I want to give you the microphone and let you open up to that, but tell us a little bit about what knowledge you'd like to share with my listeners in regards to what should be said or what needs to be said.
Well, so the first thing is really understanding what your story is. And part of that, right? Everybody's talking about right now, the industry buzzword is authenticity. Everybody wants an authentic speaker. You know, oh, they're an authentic speaker. I hate the word. I hate the word because I think it's misunderstood and it's overused. And frankly, it at this point, it drives me crazy every time I hear about how a speaker is an authentic speaker. I think what authenticity means is self-awareness. I think these really genuinely authentic speakers, authenticity is synonymous with self-awareness. They know who they are at their core, unabashedly them. They make no apologies for who they are, but they're not using authenticity as an excuse for just frankly lewd or crass behavior.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of times somebody will say, well, I'm going to swear because that's authentically who I am. Listen, I grew up in rural Alberta. I am this far away from redneck. You know, my entire family ranches and most of my friends ranch. I am not. I grew up in the arts. But even then I was freed in the arts. I have a very colorful vocabulary if needed. But I also know that I don't need to swear, and swearing does not make me authentic. Being rude with the truth does not make me authentic. You can call somebody out and make them aware of shortcomings or insights that you see if you're doing an intervention, but you don't need to be rude to them. And I think there's starting to be this microculture within the industry. It's not everybody. There's definitely a few, and some of them are pretty big names who are using authenticity as an excuse for just being obnoxious. And I think that truly, if you're being authentic, you know who you are at your core. There's a great speaker, runs a phenomenal podcast himself, Donnie Boline, and former military guy, runs a farm, and he will tell promoters, listen, don't have me on if you need it to be a PG show, because I'm going to swear. And when he says it, like, it's legitimately who he is. Like, he's not using it as an excuse. It's just when he is free to not have to censor his language, that's when the Donnie truth bombs come out. That's when he is on fire. That's when he is delivering. So for him, that is actually authentic. That's being authentic. That is him understanding who he is, but being upfront about it. He's not trying to use it as an excuse for crass behavior. He's saying, listen, when I'm going on a roll, it needs to go from here to here instantaneously. In fact, it's coming from here to here. This gets out of the way. My head is not in it. My heart is what's doing the speaking. And unfortunately, my heart really likes to swear. So he's going to preface people and give them the opportunity, if that is not what your audience, if that is something that we need to control with your audience, I'm not the speaker for you. And hey, I know these other people. Because he does have the service mentality. So part of that is knowing who you are at your core. So that's the first secret. The next secret is truly understanding that we all have a message. We all have a story. And I know so many people who are like, no, I don't. You don't understand. I've had a boring life or whatever, right? I think I have a boring life. Until somebody reads my bio at the beginning of a podcast, and I'm like, hey, yeah, I've done some pretty cool stuff. And it wasn't until I really had to explore, like, who am I? What made me who I am? Why do I have this microphone? Why are people listening to me? Why do I get that privilege that I really had to analyze what my stories were, what brought me to this. I needed to reverse engineer my life. And in doing that, I found out this really cool process that now I teach at all of my seminars and workshops, where we pull out at least 5 stories that anybody has. And it's when you get into when it's one thing to discover that story, it's another thing to discover why that story is so important to you. And it's when you get real and honest with yourself, why that story has impact on you, that story then has impact on others. And usually what it is it's that thing that we're afraid to say. And I've seen it time and time and time again, where when people are able to get raw and speak the raw, naked truth,
Mm-hmm.
and when they take the filter and the lens off and they just shine the light on, it's amazing how there's always at least one person in the audience that needed to hear it that way.
Yeah.
And if they have kept the filter on, if they had glossed over things, or if they hadn't gotten raw or real or truthful with it, the message wouldn't have resonated, the message wouldn't have landed. And I think people forget that even if you're speaking to 1,000 people, your message may not be for 1,000 people. And it's okay to reach just one, because if you reached just one, you had impact.
Right.
So
brilliant. And I think that's so important for many business owners, many people, many individuals to recognize that principle. What's something that they can take action on based on that knowledge? If they were to say, okay, that's very valuable information for me today, what could I do? What's one step I could take today to start working towards that every single day of my life?
Well, I would say the first thing is let's discover one of your stories. And again, I do this in my workshops all the time, and it's simple. We can do it right now over the podcast. So
Right.
Whoever's listening to Circle of Knowledge right now, you're going to want to do two things. You're going to want to hit pause, but before you pause, you're going to need two instructions. So the first one is, I know this is a live broadcast, so you may not be able to hit pause right now, but come back, watch a replay, and hit pause. Since you're on the device anyways, once you've hit pause, you might as well just take a time to give John a 5-star review, because you're already there. So just do that. So just, you're there, you're listening, you're obviously coming on to Circle of Knowledge fairly regularly, or you wouldn't be here. So hit pause, give John a 5-star review, tell him an episode that you enjoyed, tell him something, be more specific. Don't just be generic. Don't just do the 5 stars. That's lazy. Let's actually, we've taken the time to hit pause, so write out a review of an episode that had impact on you, or something that John has said, or a guest that he's brought on that really changed the trajectory of your life, and let him know so that he can bring more guests like that on. You've also had to pause this because you're going to go and get yourself a piece of paper and a pen. So if you've paused and you're back and you've written that review and you have your pen and you have your paper, now what I want you to do is we're going to do some very simple 3rd grade math. And I want you to take your age, however old you are, and I want you to round it to the nearest 5, right? So I'm 42. I'm going to round down to 40. If I was 43, which I will be in a half a year, then I'm going to round up to 45. So whatever your age is, you want to round to the nearest 5. Now take that number, and you're going to divide by 5. And whatever number that is going to be the time periods that we're going to divide our life into. So if I'm to do this exercise, I'm going to be 40 divided by 5 is going to give me time periods of every 8 years. And if you're like, yeah, but I like to be exact, my life is these numbers long, then whatever you had to round down by or round up by, you had a remainder. Just tack that remainder onto the beginning of your life, because nobody ever remembers the first 2 or 3 years anyways. So just tack it on to the beginning. So if I was to do that, my first time period is either 0 to 8 or 0 to 10. It doesn't affect this exercise in any way, but you pick it out. So now you've divided your life now into 5 even time periods. I want you to look at each one of those time periods and ask yourself, in this first time period, and then the next one, in these time periods, if I look at this one single time period, what is the most vivid or significant memory that I have from it? If I think back to my time between 0 and 8, what's the first memory that pops to my head? Maybe it's an image, maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a feeling, but you have a something that pops into your head. For me, I have 2 very, very, very distinct and clear memories within a 3-month time span when I'm 6 years old. The first one is the sound. They're both auditory. The first one is the sound that an audience made the first time I made them laugh. That laughter, and then the applause that came afterwards, I was hooked. That has profoundly affected the trajectory of my life ever since. And it's the first memory I can go back to it right now. I think of 0 to 6, 0 to 8, 0 to 10. It doesn't matter. That is still the first memory that I have. I go right back to that moment in time. The next memory I have is the sound that my mother made when my family physician and a police officer came to the door to tell her that my father was not coming home. And she made this, just animalistic, guttural, haunting sound. I've never heard it ever again, ever. Like, it was just throaty and it resonated, and it was this wail that sounded like the house was going to collapse. And I never want to hear it again. And again, that sound has profoundly affected and impacted the trajectory of my life. Now, these things don't have to have great significance in how they affected the trajectory of your life. It may be, a remembrance of a painting. Like I was doing this once with a client, and she remembered her vivid memory was from kindergarten and a brushstroke. And the colors of it. I think it was it was a color blue, and how the blues changed. And that was her most significant memory. And it really didn't, it's not like she became an artist later on in life. It was just this brush stroke. And there was a thing about it being calm. And so that is where the real work comes in. This was an easy exercise for us to do in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? We've now breaking it down. You've got your memories. Where the real work comes now is exploring, why is that significant? Why does it matter to you? And it's in that exploration, again, that self-awareness of, why is this memory so vivid? Because if it's vivid to you, you will have harmonic resonance with somebody else who experienced that thing. Mm-hmm. Right? For people who haven't experienced the joy of applause, my story won't resonate with you. But I know John has. And when I said it, what was the first thing he did? He's like, yeah, I know. Some people may not have experienced tragic loss, the loss of a loved one in their family yet, or in a tragic way anyways, or in a way that really affects. But those who have know that well. The closest I have come to hearing that sound, and I swear to you, it triggered some PTSD. My wife and I were watching that Josh Brolin and Jennifer Connelly film, the firefighters that perished in the forest fire.
Yeah.
And when Jennifer Connelly gets the news, she comes out of their cabin. Jennifer Connelly gets the news that Josh Brolin has passed away, and she comes out of their cabin that they've built together, and they're going to build their life. And she made that noise. It was so close. It was so close to the noise that my mom made. And it sent, like, even just thinking about it right now, it sent shivers down my spine. And I was like, she better win an Academy Award for that and not get slapped, because they, like that. Oh my goodness. It was so close. It was so close to the sound that my mom made. And I hadn't heard it for 36 years that I was like, oh, I needed to take a moment. Like, really, I had to walk away, because it was a hard thing for me to hear. And so when I tell that story, people who have experienced that will resonate it. When I talk about, what it was like waking up New Year's Day, 1997, to the left side of my body not working.
Yeah.
That story resonates with people who have faced physical challenges with their body. And some people have gotten over it and some people haven't. And I can't say which way it would work, or I can't speak to people and their circumstance. But what I can say is I can tell my story from my perspective, and the hopelessness that I felt literally waking up in a black hole, because at the time I was 17 years old, living in a room that was originally a cold cellar. And I had converted it into my bedroom and painted everything black, because, 17, I'm cool that way. But I literally woke up in a dark black hole and my body didn't work. and on top of it, it was during Christmas break, so I couldn't go anywhere. There was no socialization or interaction. So for 2 weeks, I literally sat in this hole with half of my body not functioning, and it was devastating. And when we share these stories, again, you never know who needs to hear it or the iteration, but you have to be raw and real with it. Like, the details matter, and why this story is important to you, why it's a memory that is vivid and stands out and sticks out. If you can be truthful with yourself, then you can be truthful with your audience. And remember, it's not about you, it's about your audience. So you need to be honest with them. You owe it to your audience to have an honest discussion and dialogue with them, because they're who need to hear that message. You're just a vessel to share information to them that they need to hear.
Brilliant. And thank you for sharing that. And I can only imagine the basically the resurrection of that original feeling being portrayed through a film that can in a way trigger, but in a more deeper way, be so real that it can affect you in many ways. And then I know we didn't dive too much into the story of waking up with paralyzed on the left side, but it's just amazing. I have my my mathematical equation here, and then my little notes here I wrote on my sticky note. But I love it. I'm going to actually do this exercise and just go through each one of those little, we'll call them half decades, and go through each one of my life. And I think that's a really cool and a vivid way to remind ourselves of what we've come through, what we've been through, and what we've been able to develop as strengths, as talents, as abilities, and a reminder too of what we've achieved in our lives.
And those are the questions. So once you've got your why is it important to you? Then it's exploring those lessons. Where were you at that time in your life? What did you need to know? What did you know? Like, a lot of times people look at this. These are the lessons that I needed to learn. Okay, but what did you already know? Like, where were you already set up for that lesson to then be something where you had at least enough background that you could then bring it forward to where it needed to be? And so, what were your skill sets at that time? What did you need to work on? What were your strengths? What were your weaknesses? What were the lessons, plural, that you learned from this? Because those are now the lessons that you can teach from this. And it's not necessarily just one lesson, right? Like, I think of being on stage, and lessons there are finding your passion and joy, finding your comfort, recognizing that your audience is on your side. Like, there's so many lessons that came from that. In my mom's story and my dad passing, there is strength in adversity, there's overcoming adversity, there is finding life after loss, there is knowing that your inner strength, that there is a way to get on and beyond. Like, there's so many different lessons that I've raised from that, even in and around the confusion and not fully understanding loss until, again, I the related memory for me is, you fast forward to 12, which is my new time period, right? That's my second time period. The distinct memory of walking in that auditorium at that end of year assembly and walking past my mom, and it's a packed assembly, right? Because everybody's getting awards, all the parents have been invited. It's an elementary school gym, so it's not really all that big, and they had all these seats, and everybody had a seat, and beside my mom was this empty seat. And to this day, I have no idea why that seat was empty, but when I walked past it, I looked and I thought, look at that, my dad should be sitting there. Wow. And the moment I thought it, I'm walking up, they've called my name, I'm the top student of the school, I'm about to be presented with this award and this bursary, and look, I got another plaque, and how cool is that? And all I can think of is, Dad's not here. Well, he'll never be here. He's not going to see me get this award. He's not going to see me graduate from elementary school. He's not going to see me graduate from high school. He'll never see me graduate from college. My dad's never going to see me get married. He's never going to witness the birth of his grandchildren. My father is gone. And I was just bawling. I was bawling by the time I got there. And as I walked back, one of the other things that dawned on me was, but is he? Because if he was truly gone, that seat wouldn't be vacant. Something is present there. And I have felt my father's
Wow.
presence in my life ever since. Like, I know that my Father is here with me, and I'm not even worried about a religious or a spiritual component to that. I just know that my Father it will always be with me at a base scientific level. He's in my DNA.
Hmm.
Half of me is my Father, so I will always carry him with me in some form of capacity. But I know metaphysically, my Father's there,
Yeah.
and that didn't really dawn on me until much later. So all of these things are lessons. When we go back and we re-examine them through the lens, we can always pull out new and interesting and amazing stories that, or at least themes and lessons that we can apply to these vivid memories of ours. But it's when we get real with them and what they mean, and we don't hold back. Like, I have no problem telling people, I think my Father's still with me, no matter how frou-frou or woo-woo it feels. I'll tell it to a scientific crowd, and I will tell it to a religious crowd, and I will tell it to a spiritual crowd. I will say it, and I don't care. And the people who need to hear it, it will resonate with.
I love that. Phenomenal story. Thank you for your details. You're such a great storyteller. I love listening. I can listen to you all day, Tyler. This is awesome. And I know your time is short, but I want to respect your timing. And again, thank you for the details, the connection, and then the action plans on what to do and what to do with the results of the knowledge that we've received today. But just thank you overall. Like, this is an awesome conversation. I'd love to have you back on the show so we can just banter back and forth and chat a little bit more. But this has been awesome for me as far as being the front row seat learner at this table. I want to encourage my listeners to go follow you. You're everywhere on social media. You've got Facebook, Instagram. You've got a few other sites as well. I want to send them to did I click on the right one? Yeah, I did. SeanTylerFoley.com. Go check him out. Also, again, from earlier, go grab a copy of his book. You can find a really good local, supportive, sustainable copy at your local bookshop through bookshop.org. And then the last thing was, I believe you had a free gift or something you wanted to share. If you wanted to explain that, it's stages.SeanTylerFoley.com.
Yeah, and even if they just want to go to the main website, the above the fold, the whole first thing is to click to get to our Endless Stages Facebook group. And Endless Stages Facebook group is a free resource that we've made available. We're really encouraging particularly self-published authors and entrepreneurs who are maybe struggling, either finding out what their message is, or if they've determined it, getting their message out there. I want to take my 36 now years of experience and download it. My business partner, Michael, has been speaking for 30 to 40 years himself. We have a lot of people that are in that group that kind of hang out on the sidelines because they're heavily involved in promoting speakers, and they like to look for new talent. And so what I do is every Tuesday at 1:00 Mountain Time, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, I come on and I do a 20-minute live training. We do the 20-minute Tuesday tips every Tuesday at 1:00 Mountain, just to be able to help people learn. And a lot of that, it's a very engaged community. And so a lot of the teaching and the lessons that we go through come from the questions that are coming out of the group each week. People are, we're celebrating their successes. So we had one member who has been #1 ranked guest on Podmatch. Wow. And so we've actually launched a Podmatch takeover challenge this month, where we're encouraging 100 of our members to try and get on 100 podcasts in 100 days. And if they're able to do that, we're going to take over the top 10. I've been a #1 ranked guest on Podmatch for 6 months out of the last year, and I haven't been out of the top 10 for an entire 12-month period. So I know how to get people up there. So we've started to train some of these other people how to do it. We've had members who've been in the top 10. Charlene Madden, who's a member of Endless Stages, has been the #1 ranked guest for the last 2 months. And then I've been #2 or 3. But it's good because I'm happy to pass the reins on. Robert Riopel, I just checked this morning. He's back up to the #2 spot. A good friend of mine and one of my personal coaching clients, Andrea, was #1 in January. So we're showing people how to get their message out, whether that's on podcast stages, other people's stages, your own stage. I run that training, and then a lot of it is based off of the book, and a lot of it is based off of my seminar stuff. So over the next couple of weeks, if anybody wants to come in, Again, it's free. So if they just click on the website, SeanTylerFoley.com, the first thing you're going to see is join Endless Stages. And we're going to go over mindset, pre-talk routines, how to calm your nerves and master your body so that you feel more comfortable on stage. We're going to talk about focus, how to protect your voice when you have to speak over and over again. Like I'm doing this 8 hours a day.
Wow.
So there's what you need to do to be able to protect your instrument and really bring the most to your audience, how to book gigs, where your opportunities are as a speaker, the 5 Ps of putting together a good performance, how to engage and re-engage your audience. We're going to go at all. So if anything in there sounded interesting to any of your audience, by all means, please come and join the free Facebook group. We would love to see you in on one of our live trainings on Tuesday. And then we have a ton of free giveaways and freebies, including a digital download of the book. So if they're like, $17.95 for a book that I can't read in public because of the cover, well then get the free PDF. Join Endless Stages, and you'll get a free PDF of the book.
I love that, and I'm in it for the challenge. I think that's a great challenge to be on, be one of the top 10 or just in the top rankings on Podmatch. That's a really cool list to be a part of, and such a fun community. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for the amazing interview. I'm excited about this. I'm ecstatic about the information you've shared, and I'm also just really pumped up to give this to my audience as a gift. And I appreciate you and your genuineness, and let's even go further from genuine to just your openness. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And the other word I'm searching for is, and I always look for really great descriptive words that are personal to the person. But I appreciate the fact that you identified your disgust for the word authenticity. And I appreciate that, because I see you as somebody who is present and somebody who is riding the wave of emotion, what's the word here? Of emotional truth. And you're always speaking and spatting truth, which I love. And I think that that's just your personality. And I think that comes from a lot of what your experience is and what you've done. And I appreciate that. And I know that my listeners will as well. And you'll see some of Circle of Knowledge people hanging out in your groups as well.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, John, and you have a wonderful day.
You too, my friend. Go enjoy your hike, and we'll talk to you soon. And this has been another episode of the Circle of Knowledge podcast. Remember that everything you need is within you now. Go and take immediate action as a result of the knowledge you've received today. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you later.